Now at Lowe's, faster quotes start at the Lowe's Pro Desk. Got a material list handwritten on a sticky note or saved as a photo? Perfect. Bring it to us and get a quote in minutes. And if you don't see what you need on the shelf, we'll help you get it. You can access thousands of products beyond what's available in-store or on Lowes.com, right from the Lowe's Pro Desk. Build quotes faster and source the materials you need to keep your jobs moving. Just like that, at Lowe's.
Welcome back to the Center in the City podcast, a space to pause, breathe, and come back to yourself, even in the middle of a full and busy life. I'm your host, Wade Brill, and in each episode, we explore mindfulness for real life, simple practices, reflections, tools to help you feel grounded, present, and connected to what matters most to you. So let's settle in and let's get centered. Welcome back to the Center in the City podcast. I'm your host, Wade Brill, and I am so glad you are here. On today's solo episode, I am doing a little debrief download of what it was like to live abroad in Spain for the last 3 months. So today I'm going to break down why we took this trip, the intention behind it, what I learned about myself, what I learned about culture, what I learned about living, the pleasant, the unpleasant, the neutral parts, and some of the questions that you have asked me on Instagram that I'm going to intertwine into this episode. So if you've been somebody exploring, wanting to do a sabbatical abroad or move abroad or just spend an extended period living abroad and have had questions or fears that come up or daydreamings, I hope this episode will support you feeling a little bit more clear and confident to say yes and how to stay centered in a big life move or a big life transition that can be living abroad. So wherever you are listening to this episode, I welcome you to settle in and let's get centered. Three months ago, I packed my bags, my husband and I, we reorganized our house to rent, and we took off to live abroad in Spain. Like many people, I imagine this chapter would bring a sense of clarity and inspiration and some adventure into my life, and it for sure did. But what surprised me most wasn't what I necessarily discovered about Spain, it's what I discovered about myself. And that's what happens when we travel. That's what happens when we leave our bubbles. And so today I'm sharing what challenged me, what changed me, what I learned about slowing down in Spanish culture, and the lessons that I am bringing back home. My husband and I said yes to this trip because it's something that I've been wanting for a really long time. Last year, we said yes to a European adventure that was more geared towards my husband's work. And this time it was connected to what would it be like for us to find home abroad. And so our intention was to explore different cities, different lifestyles, different rhythms, and explore what would it be like if we called this city our home. Now, this trip came together really fast. We booked our tickets, we rented our house, we found our Airbnb, like all in a matter of a few weeks before we actually left. And I talked about this on a recent Substack article around self-trust, that if you had told me years ago that I would be planning a trip last minute, that I would be renting my house, that I wouldn't know where I was going to live or be necessarily in the next 3 months, I would have said, yeah, right. Because I am such a planner, and specifically when it comes to feeling overwhelmed or navigating uncertainty, the controller archetype in me, and if you haven't yet taken my overwhelm archetype, that is my strongest pattern, is this overwhelm archetype of a controller. And so if you're curious what yours is, head on over to wadebrill.com/quiz and you can discover yours for free. And I find this so helpful because knowing that my overwhelm archetype is a controller, she loves to control and plan and tighten when it comes to navigating uncertainty. And she would have had a conniption fit years ago if I was doing this exact same trip. So it was so fun to be able to see how much I've been able to grow and practice being with my own overwhelm archetype and how I've been able to let the controller take the back seat in life and instead let my higher self lead from this place of self-trust and ease. So we said yes to this trip, only having our flight, only having a one-way ticket, only having an Airbnb booked like maybe 10 days before we actually landed, if so. We had a tentative plan, but we really grounded ourselves and our relationship and our communication that we were going to stay flexible and fluid, that we were going to stay open, that we knew we were going to be in a part of our life where we were going to need to make a lot of decisions, but we would let ourselves wait to that present moment to be able to make the decision. And some questions I got from Instagram followers was, why Spain? And I think that's a really great question. And one of the reasons is my husband and I both speak Spanish pretty fluently. He's very fluent. I am still gringa fluent, but definitely can hold my own. And it's a language that I absolutely love. It's a language that I'm not great at, but yet my heart and my soul feel like Spanish is the language versus English. And I've just been growing up in an English environment, so I can speak English well most of the time. And I laugh at myself with so much joy because when I speak Spanish, I feel like I'm speaking it with my body, and I feel like my body thinks it can speak so much more clearly than the words can actually come out in my mouth. So I think I'm way better than I actually am. But you know what? I don't really care because it's important, because this is what actually helps me build confidence to keep going, to keep practicing in uncomfortable situations. So the first place that my husband and I chose to land was Las Palmas in Gran Canaria. And this was such a fun city to land in because we both had no idea what to expect. We both had never really known anybody that had been there. We didn't do much research beforehand. There was a few things that we were looking for, like being in a beach community that had city, that spoke Spanish, that was around nature. So those were some of our primary objectives. And my husband and I were both able to work and live abroad. So we maintain this idea that we're not really going for vacation. We're going to continue life. We want to feel, what does it look like to actually live and breathe and try to create community in these various cities that we were going to land in. So another community member asked me, what are some expectations you had when you were living abroad? And I think it's a really good question because I think you can't have any expectations in general. Having expectations in life is always a way to set ourselves up for an emotional roller coaster that we don't need. So as my husband and I were sailing the sea of uncertainty of where we're going to live and, the lifestyle and how things are going to unfold, we had to really ground into this practice of fluidity, of trusting ourselves individually, of trusting each other, of being able to know that life is going to unfold how it unfolds. And then I feel like especially in Latin and Spanish cultures, there's this essence that it just is, right? There's this sense that life is kind of a ball of chaos. And sometimes things work out perfectly, like sometimes the trains show up on time and sometimes they don't. And it teaches us how to go with the flow. Where in American culture, there tends to be a lot more sense of structure and reliability and predictability that can feel, quote unquote, safe and comforting and feel like we're in a city or community or country of stability. But we also know that's not very true. So it can be challenging as we step into this adventure chapter that we're navigating a lot of uncertainty. But if you have this mindset to be open, to be fluid, can be very helpful as you step into uncertainty because you know that you're going to be able to figure it out. At least that's what's helped me a lot. So going in with expectations is not a great way to open yourself up to life, because that's one of the gifts of traveling is that you get to find these little unexpected adventures or experiences. And when we plan too much, we close ourselves off to other opportunities. Some of the other hard or maybe uncomfortable parts of saying yes to a trip like this is that being abroad might sound like it's this pure adventure. And it is for like the first 2 weeks, wherever you land. That's been my experience. But then reality and life really sets in. This rhythm sets in where loneliness can be a big part, where you can start to spiral and think, oh, am I making the right choice? Or is it worth it for me to really be here? Or why am I really here? There were definitely moments where I felt lonely on this trip, where I missed having my girlfriends to be able to go make plans, where I missed feeling a sense of community, to have dinner parties or be more social. And I'd maybe let myself like dwell in that for a little bit, but then I realized, okay, Wade, so what are you going to do about it? And so I'd have these talks with myself, and it was like, okay, where can I put myself out there to go meet some people, go have a coffee with somebody, go reach out for connection, go take a class, go find or build community, go work at a co-working space. So being abroad, leaving your bubble of home, of predictability, of comfort, it can, of course, bring up all of these uncomfortable moments or experiences. But that's also where we grow. And so it can feel scary to put yourself out there as, especially an adult, and learning how to make more adult friends in later life, and being able to be okay to move with and through that uncomfortableness is part of our growth. It's also vulnerable. It's vulnerable to put yourself out there, to ask somebody out for coffee or to invite somebody or try to make plans with people that you don't really know that well. And sometimes they'll say yes, and sometimes they'll say no, or sometimes they'll say maybe and be flaky. And so even though it can feel vulnerable or uncomfortable, for me, this is something I absolutely love. I love meeting new people. I love being connected to people around the world. So even if there's a piece of uncomfortable that I need to work through, I know that it's worth it and it's connected to my values and how I want to live life. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but another uncomfortable piece of living abroad is the decision fatigue that happens. Again, you don't have your set schedule, you don't have your set routines or your places, so everything is fresh and new, and sometimes that can feel, even if it's exciting, overwhelming. One of the first things I do when I land is I try to find the places of community and the things that I enjoy as grounding practices. So for instance, I try to find a Pilates studio, or I try to find a co-working space or a cafe that I really enjoy, so that can become a part of my ritual and daily activities that bring me joy. And it might sound really easy, but it's not. Searching on Google, reading reviews, trying to set up new accounts in every, different Pilates studio or fitness gym. It's annoying. It's exhausting. It can create definitely this decision fatigue of, oh, do I buy a package here, or do I do single sessions? And these can feel like stupid problems, but I really find that setting myself up with some sort of stabilizing ritual creates some form of community, and it creates a routine that is very grounding when I'm in a new place. Another area of decision fatigue, as I mentioned, my husband and I had this intention to explore different cities and spend 1 month in each city. And we had a vague sense of where we wanted to go. But again, we allowed ourselves to stay present to make the decision. And that meant that we were booking these places maybe 2 weeks or 10 days before we actually went there. And that part can be really challenging, because it's like this desire to feel present where we are, where our feet are, and then at the same time be planning for what's next. Where do we want to land? And it's in these moments where I know I can tap into my perfectionist, maximizing mindset that wants to make everything perfect and wants to optimize. And I have to remind myself when I get into that pattern to soften the grip and be able to rest back and say that, you know what, we're going to make the best decision we can in this moment with the information that we have. And each decision is a leap of faith. One of the other challenging and yet also really beautiful elements of living abroad is that you're in a new environment. And when you're in a new environment, because our environment definitely affects who we are, how we show up, what we say yes to, what we say no to. So I loved paying attention to like, who am I when I'm in this new space? Who am I when I'm in a place of uncomfortability? Or who am I when I can't speak the language perfectly? How do I show up? How do I interact in these uncomfortable moments? What parts of me do I feel like I live more into that feel more authentic? And what parts of me do I feel like aren't there that I miss? Or what parts of me come alive while I'm living abroad that isn't really alive when I'm living my life back at home? Living abroad in Spain taught me some very specific things that I want to debrief with you all. So number one, that time is not a punishment. Time is not a prison. Time is not meant to be used as a pressure cooker. Instead, time is merely some structure, some loose structure that allows for flexibility and, most importantly, allows for enjoying and being present in life. So let's break this down a little bit more. In Spain, they are really good at making time feel spacious. Long lunches, time isn't rushed. Yes, people have structures. Yes, people meet for meetings and it's not just this free-for-all. But in the States, it would be like, okay, I can have coffee with you from 8 to 9. Whereas in Spain, you might get to the coffee date at 8 and you will linger and somebody will eventually say, okay, it's time for me to leave or I have to leave at this time. But there's not this sense of predefined time structure that is already binding and feels rushed or pressured. Lunches are really spacious. People actually take lunch breaks. Things shut down. Stores close for a few hours in the middle of the day. There are so many holidays in Spain that people actually get to enjoy. They get to take off work and have spaciousness with their friends, with their families, to go out to meals, to go to the beach, to go on trips, and actually enjoy their life. People on the streets, the pace is different. You know, I noticed as a New Yorker, my fast pace is always present inside of me. And when I'm walking on the streets, whether it's the streets of Barcelona or in Las Palmas or in Sitges or somewhere else in the Garraf region, I would walk so much faster than those around me. And I noticed I would push, my timing to the end. Like, oh, I have to be somewhere at 10 and I need to leave the house at this time. And I would try to, again, maximize my time and then try to get to wherever I was going right on time. And when I'd get to my meeting or get to my class or get to wherever, I was always on time or even probably a little early. And everybody else was typically that 10 to 15 minutes later, that Spanish time where things kind of just got pushed to like when you fully arrive. And it was a reminder for me, like I would laugh at myself again with love when I'd arrive early because I'd be like, wait, I don't need to have this time pressure. This is not the culture I live in. It's okay to arrive a few minutes late. It's okay. You can let somebody know, but it's not even necessary because people just expect. Something else that Spain taught me was it reminded me what it's like to feel safe. Like I could walk on the streets and not feel hypervigilant. Yes, I was conscious of where's my phone and where's my wallet because there are some pickpocketing thefts that happen. But I noticed how safe I felt as a woman, as just a human walking down the street. And it felt so good to feel my body at ease. Another cultural impact that I noticed was just emphasizing the values in Spanish culture are so much centered around enjoyment and family and friends and food and sports. And these types of cultural investments feel very much aligned with the life that I want to live and the life that I try to live. And I do want to highlight that, Spanish salaries for the most part are way less than they are in America. And so a lot of Spanish life, yes, they work hard and they don't make that much money. And they also know how to love and enjoy life and can enjoy life to the best of its abilities without feeling like they're on this hedonic treadmill of accumulating more and more wealth. And I know this shift in mindset can feel really scary to a lot of Americans. To be honest, it still feels uncomfortable to me to feel like, what do you mean you're not trying to make so much money and you're not trying to build wealth and you're not trying to save for your retirement? But for a lot of people who live in Spain, they're taken care of for the most part by their government. They have free healthcare or very affordable healthcare. So some of their basic needs are already met. And so this idea of accumulating wealth and taxes are really high, can feel like it impacts their ability to have certain things in life, but they're also not a culture of overconsumption. They're not buying on Amazon nonstop. They're not shopping till they drop. Yes, people shop. Yes, people buy things. Like, I'm not saying that's not happening. I just think that the culture overall, you're not spending as much money as you do in the States. What Spain also taught me was about food shopping. And I love food shopping. You've heard me talk about this on the podcast before. It is like one of my biggest joys. I love going to the grocery store. I know a lot of people dislike it or it feels like a waste of time. For me, it's like going to a museum. There's a sense of creativity that comes alive. There's a sense of inspiration that comes alive. And in Spain, we were grocery shopping maybe like every 2 to 3 days. And that's for a few reasons. One, our fridge is a lot smaller, so we can't fit as much in. But two, the groceries, the produce doesn't necessarily last as long as it does in the States because it's more fresh. And that's the culture. People leave in the morning and go food shopping and buy things for lunch or for dinner for that day. In American culture, we typically food shop once every week, every 10 days, maybe go to the store for little things here and there. But for me, what I learned was I can stay more present to like what we need, what we want. We ended up spending less money on groceries because groceries cost less. However, I will say that packaging is typically smaller, so you might run out of milk faster or you might run out of bread faster. I also love how in Spanish culture, it's still alive in big cities and in smaller cities. There's that sense of local. Like you go to your local butcher, you go to your local fisher, you go to your local produce vendor. You can also go to your local supermarket that has everything there. And there's a sense of community. Living in one place for a month, I started to know the meat provider. And when I'd walk by the store, I would wave to him. And it was such a sweet feeling of community. Now, I'm not saying you can't have that here in the States. I think you can, especially if you find your places that you love and you're a devoted patron who goes there very often. We ended up making a lot of meals. We also went out to a handful of restaurants, but we got to this place where cooking was fun to use more local ingredients. It was always healthier. We could always have more vegetables than they're typically on the menu in Spanish cuisine. We had fun trying new Spanish restaurants, eating a lot of patatas bravas, sardines. When it came to cooking, I loved trying their local produce and trying their local beans and trying their local sauces. One of the other aspects of Spanish culture and what it taught me was to make fun and joy a priority. I think in American culture, we get so tied to we need to schedule it in. We need to make sure it's on our schedule and it's on our agenda because we're working so much and we're working for the weekend mentality. Whereas in Spain, it's like every day there can be some joy. Every day there can be some fun. It doesn't have to be this even big thing. They make it a priority to catch up with a friend for a drink or a coffee before work, after work. Being social is easy. It's integrated into the fabric of the culture. What Spanish culture also taught me was how important body positivity is. There are so many nude beaches or topless beaches, which are prevalent all over Europe. But specifically in Spain, it was like any body is a beach body. You didn't have to look good in a bikini to be on the beach. Any age was on the beach, naked or clothed. Everybody was accepted. And it was just this free sense of be in your body, love your body, nourish your body, give your body sunshine, vitamin D, ocean air. One of my favorite things I did while living abroad in Spain was going to the nude beach and jumping in the Mediterranean nude. Like it was so freeing. And I didn't feel weird at all. It wasn't creepy. It wasn't sketchy. It was just this ability to be living in my body. Another thing Spanish culture taught me is that you don't wait to deserve rest. That rest is built into the way of being in Spain, right? There's the siesta. And I don't know how many younger people are actually taking advantage of the siesta, but even there's this intention to slow down, right? The afternoon, it becomes really hot, especially in the summer months. There's a slower pace that it's just even kind of impossible to be quote unquote productive. But you can slow down and enjoy life and not feel this need to keep rushing, that you and your body deserve rest. This time of recovery and renewal is built into the system, built into the culture and community. The last essence of what Spanish culture taught me was how important community is. And of course, as a community builder, as somebody who loves connecting with people, who values connection and family and community and friends so much, I really loved how much the culture celebrates a lot of holidays and festivals and creates the sense of community around all of their town plazas and squares. And even in winter time, so it's not just in summertime, people are eating outdoors, people spend time outdoors. They less so invite each other into their homes and more so meet outside, meet at cafes, meet at restaurants, at bars for connection, for community. And so you see so many people connecting with each other just around you. It feels just life is happening around you. And this feels like a very stark difference from American culture and specifically even culture here in Seattle, where it can feel a little bit more individualistic or there's not as much community activation happening besides sports or besides music in the park or theater in the park that tends to happen around the summertime. Here in American culture, it takes a while to schedule time with each other. Typically when you're seeing a friend, you need to book each other out at least 2 weeks in advance because everybody's schedules are so full. And it's not really like that in Spain. Of course, people have full lives. It might not work to meet up as casually, but people live so much more presently. They're not as much tied to their calendars, that there's this essence of, oh, hey, you want to just get together and go grab a drink or go do this or show up in this way. And it feels a little bit more easeful than let me coordinate my schedule or let me see what I can work out. Now, Spanish culture is not perfect, right? There's no culture that is perfect. One of the things I did really miss from being there was that typically the energy isn't as driven or ambitious as it is, let's say, in the States or where I was born and raised in New York City or even here in Seattle. And so even though it's really refreshing to be in a place that values more of life than work, work is still extremely important to me, and it feels really good to be around people who are motivated and driven and have some of that ambition because it's inspiring. It keeps me motivated. It keeps me energized. So I did notice that being there within that culture, I had to really tap into more of my own motivation. I had to be more self-driven. I couldn't rely on the environment around me to be that motivator. For instance, there were times where I was working and needed to work and had some deadlines I had to complete, and yet I could hear culture right outside my door. I hear people enjoying restaurants and taking strolls and enjoying the beach. And I so badly wanted to go just sit outside, have a glass of wine, soak in the environment, soak in that sense of joy and enjoyment and savoring that is so present in Spanish culture. But here I was in my house, in my apartment, at my desk, like working. And I felt this tension of like, come on, people, like, don't you want to work? Don't you want to be doing something, not just enjoying and playing? And I want to highlight this because we tend to be in this like either or extremes of life, and no culture is perfect. American culture isn't perfect. So, what we want to create that balance of joy and enjoyment and fun and play and work and focus and growth, that is something that we as an individual get to determine. And even though our space, our environment influences us and impacts us, I think it's really important that it comes back to, okay, but what are we doing? What is the individual? How is the individual taking ownership of our own choices, our own priorities? So if I could see my family moving to Spain long term, it then becomes the inverse discussion of what from American culture would I want to take with me? What do I really value about American culture that I would want to bring with me and integrate into Spanish lifestyle? Living and working remote from Spain did reaffirm to my nervous system that busyness, even though I love being motivated and love working hard and love working towards the things that matter to me, I don't need to create busyness to feel worthy. And I think that sense of full calendars and back to back and the hustle and bustle used to very much be part of my identity, be part of what made me feel like I was worthy enough. And I know this is a very common theme that a lot of my clients feel because we are so conditioned in American culture to feel like the busier we are, the more productive we are, the more self-worth we have, the more we are somebody, the more importance we have, the more money we're making, just becomes more and more and more. When in fact, I was reaffirmed that I could work and do good work and be really present with my clients and build my business while also living a lifestyle that felt spacious, living a lifestyle that prioritizes fun, that prioritizes being with family and connection and enjoyment of life. When I look back at these last 3 months that my husband and I had in Spain, it's not that we played tourist and did all of these big extravagant sightseeings and adventures. What felt really meaningful was the integration into culture. We didn't want to be observers of culture. We wanted to integrate. So we found local events, local community events. We practiced our Spanish. We prioritized connecting and meeting locals. And for me, that felt really meaningful because life got to be about, and this trip and adventure and experience got to be about the small moments, those little moments of connection, those little moments of visiting the local theater, the little moments of trying local cuisine. That's what made me feel alive and connected to us living abroad. Now, I've spoken to many people that are in awe of doing something like my husband and I did. Not because they're jealous, but because there is this desire to have an adventure or to have an abroad experience that maybe they've never done before, or maybe they haven't done it since college, and they want to try something new with their family or try something new as a couple or as an individual. And the logistics can be really overwhelming, so much so that it can prevent people from wanting to plan a big move like this or a big experience. And I get it. I have been wanting to do this for a few years. And so I'm here to remind you, if this is in your heart and in your desires, to trust that it will happen and to start now, to start planning, to start allowing yourself to dreamstorm of what this could look like and feel like. I have a client who wanted to do a similar trip. She wanted to go to Spain for a few months and never thought that work would allow her to take this kind of sabbatical and work remotely. And here we are 6 months into the year, and she's been given approval. And so, what a gift to then give her this freedom where she doesn't have to quit her job. She doesn't have to think about a new job. She doesn't have to eat into her savings. There's possibility of it working out. And sometimes it just takes a little longer for those seed planting opportunities to bloom to actually make trips like this happen. I am a strong believer, especially if you've listened to this podcast before or you know my work. I am a strong believer in not waiting to make things happen in life. Of course, we can derail ourselves. We can self sabotage. We can let fear stop us. I know I have many of my dreams, like publishing my book. It took me 10 years to publish my book. But here is an example of not giving up on the things that matter to you. And again, they might take time. And I think we're really used to the things we want to happen right now. And if they don't happen right now, we think they're never going to happen. But to remind ourselves, good things take time. And that step by step, we can start to plant the seeds to put it into motion. And life is too short, life is too precious to not do the things that matter to us right now. Don't wait until you're 65 and retired to take that trip if that is on your bucket list to do now. Make it a priority. Start to figure out how to do it, whether that's saving money or figuring out creative ways to have more money to be able to afford it, or logistically finding home exchanges or finding house swaps that allow for these kinds of trips to be more feasible. As I integrate back into my life here in Seattle, I'm trying to be really present to the transition. Like, even as I unpack, paying attention to the clothes, the thousands of pieces of clothes that I had packed away. Do I really need to keep holding on to these? Even though I did a really big edit as we were getting ready to rent our house, as I integrate back, I'm like trying to look at life through fresh eyes and not get back into autopilot. Oh, this is the way things were, or this is how I did things, or this is how I interacted with my space. My husband and I were eating dinner last night out on our deck, and it felt like we had never left. So how quickly we can change and adapt back to our normal rhythms. And that feels good in a certain way, right? There's a comfort, there's an ease to sinking back. And there's also this feeling of like, whoa, but what just happened? Like, I don't want to lose these last 3 months. And so I'm really trying to slow this transition down by paying attention to what feels good. What feels good? What do I want to keep doing? And what doesn't feel good anymore? And what do I want to change? Or how do I want to interact with the space differently? One of the biggest gifts of travel is that it opens our eyes. It opens our eyes to how we live life, the parts and pieces of ourselves, what's important to ourselves. How does the world live? It allows us to be inspired. As I bring this episode to a close, I'm so curious to hear what's coming alive for you. Has there been a trip or a big adventure that you've wanted to take or prioritize that's kind of tickling at you saying, hey, listen to me, make me a priority? Is there a way of living or being that you want to be embodying more or prioritizing in your life? Or maybe you're going on your own trip or adventure soon and you're thinking about, how can I pay attention to how I'm showing up in this new culture and what comes alive for me, or what I want to be taking home from this trip and integrating in my life, or what do I want to let go of while I'm on this trip? Or maybe just even I'm going on this trip and I want to set an intention for myself. I've never thought about that before. Whatever is coming up for you, I would love to hear. So feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at OneWage. Share with me your biggest takeaways, what's coming alive for you. And if you know somebody in your community that would value listening and learning from this episode, please take a moment to share it with them. And as always, thank you for letting me into your ears, your heart, your mind. It is such a privilege to be in connection and conversation with you. And until next time, stay centered.